Joe Biden has been hitting social media like crazy lately, and he's exposing his plan to how he thinks he's going to win this November. Super simple. He's pretty much going after all the single subject voters. So we're talking about abortion, the whole LGBTQ plus number, whatever the heck that is, all the college graduates, which is why he's doing all these things with the student loans, which is super ridiculous. And then also he's going to scream, Orange man bad. Orange man is going to be a dictator. He is going to be against democracy. He's going to tear up the Constitution. That is his plan to win this November, to get enough of those single subject voters over and to convince enough of the independents that Orange man bad is worse than all the failure that he has had since he has been president of the United States. Another big stance that he has been taking recently is his lack of support for Israel and their fight to eliminate Hamas. He is not standing up for Israel. He is doing everything he can to make Israel seem like they are going about this entire approach in the wrong way. I wouldn't doubt it if, like, in a couple weeks or so, he's sitting there telling Israel there needs to be a ceasefire. There is always those conversations about a two-state solution, even though Israel is one of our top allies within the world. But let's all be real. The only reason that he's doing that with Israel is because he wants to win Michigan. He's looking at those people over in Dearborn. He's like, if I want to win over these Muslim voters, I need to do what I can to make them think that I am standing with Palestine. And of course, the main one with Biden and all of his mainstream minions that they are consistently pushing is Orange man bad, right? Trump is horrible. Here is one of Biden's recent tweets. Let's look at where Trump and MAGA extremists would take the country if they win again. Exploding national debt, threatening to cut Social Security and Medicare, and passing a national ban on women's right to choose. We can't go back. They're going to do everything they can to get the electorate to fear what Trump is going to do, even though we've already had 4 years of Trump. And guess what? The economy was pretty amazing. The border was pretty amazing up until 2019. Well, okay, so the economy, but even the border through the entire tenure of Trump in office, we had it pretty damn good, but Biden's trying to get you to forget that, forget the fact that we were in such a great position as a country and that he's going to be this huge dictator if he does get elected this November. Then DEI is the driving factor to kind of get on board all the LGBTQ. I'm not even going to try and say all that. That is the Democrats' way to try and get them on their side when we are talking about these single subject voters. And then the student loan thing. This is just, it blows my, the Supreme Court already said that this is unconstitutional and he keeps on doing it. And you got all these people, yeah, go ahead. Trump's the one who's a threat to democracy. You are blatantly violating what the Supreme Court told you. It is unconstitutional to forgive those student loans like you are. That is ridiculous. But people don't see that. Why aren't people seeing that? That is the biggest question. Why can't people see through all the lies, all the manipulations that are coming out of the Biden administration? Well, recently, I'm sure you've seen this, the thing that came out about someone who's worked with NPR for the last 25 years. I'm going to take a little bit because I think there's a lot of substance in this article. I want to make sure I don't leave too much out. But let's dig into this article right now about someone who's over at NPR kind of admitting that, guess what? They are driving an agenda over there. There's a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure you guys have those people who do listen to NPR thinking that they are the ultimate source of news. When looking at what this person said, that's not the fact. They are driving an agenda over there. When you're in this huge echo chamber consistently driving one narrative, of course you're going to think that conservatives are full of misinformation and disinformation. You look at us and be like, no. I heard this on NPR. This is what NPR is saying. What you are saying is factually false because I heard from NPR. Or let's even go from that. MSNBC, CNN, CBS, all these mainstream media organizations, all they need is just to get a few here and there. Even though viewership is dropping off dramatically from all these platforms, they just need to get a little bit here and there and manipulate your minds in a way to think that whatever you see with your eyes and hear with your ears is wrong. So this article came out from the Free Press talking about this woman who does work over at NPR right now, and it is titled, I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust. Real quick, guys, I will get back into this conversation, but first things first, if you do love this content or if you do want to follow along, kind of see what I ramble about in any future events to come, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, maybe give me a thumbs up, notification bell, that way you're notified every single time that I put out a new video. Let's get back to this topic right now. Bear with me, guys, because like I said, I am going to be reading quite a bit of this so I can kind of give you the full context, even though I'm not going to read the entire article. I'm going to start it from the beginning, and I am not going to have any gaps going into the point that I stop. You know the stereotype of the NPR listener, an EV driving, world playing, tote bag carrying coastal elite. It doesn't precisely describe me, but it's not far off. I'm Sarah Lawrence, educated, was raised by a lesbian peace activist mother. I drive a Subaru, and Spotify says my listening habits are most similar to people in Berkeley. I fit the NPR mold. I'll cope to that. So when I got a job here 25 years ago, I never looked back. As a senior editor on the business desk where news is always breaking, we've covered upheavals in the workplace, supermarket prices, social media, and AI. It's true NPR has always had a liberal bent, but during most of my tenure here, an open-minded, curious culture prevailed. We were nerdy, but not knee-jerk, activists, or scolding. In recent years, however, that has changed. Today, those who listen to NPR or read its coverage online find something different. The distilled worldview of a very small segment of the US population. If you were conservative, you will read this and say, duh, it's always been this way. Yeah, I pretty much could say that. But it hasn't. For decades since its founding in 1970, a wide swath of America turned into NPR for reliable journalism and gorgeous audio pieces with birds singing to the Amazon. Millions came to us for conversations that expose us to voices around the country and the world radically different from our own. Engaging precisely because they were unguarded and unpredictable, no image generated more pride within NPR than the farmer listening to Morning Edition from his or her tractor at sunrise. Back in 2011, although NPR's audience tilted a bit to the left, it still bore a resemblance to America at large. 26% of listeners described themselves as conservative, 23% as middle of the road, and 37% as liberal. By 2023, the picture was completely different. Only 11% described themselves as very or somewhat conservative, 21% as middle of the road, and 67% of listeners said they were very or somewhat liberal. We weren't just losing conservatives, we were also losing moderates and traditional liberals. An open-minded spirit no longer existed within NPR, and now, predictably, we don't have an audience that reflects America. That wouldn't be a problem for an openly polemical news outlet serving a niche audience. But for NPR, which purports to consider all things, it's devastating both for its journalism and its business model. All right, so here's what really breaks into how they drove this narrative to keep Trump out of office. This is super important, so that's why I am reading this. So as it continues, I am not skipping to another portion of the article. This is continuing from where I just left off. Like many unfortunate things, the rise of advocacy took off with Donald Trump. As in many newsrooms, his election in 2016 was greeted at NPR with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and despair. Pretty crazy to think that that's coming from a news organization that claims to be balanced. Just so you know, I eagerly voted against Trump twice, but felt we were obliged to cover him fairly. But what began as tough, straightforward coverage of a belligerent, truth-impaired president veered towards effort to damage or topple Trump's presidency. Persistent rumors that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia over the election became a catnip that drove reporting. At NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. Schiff, who was the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, became NPR's guiding hand. Its ever-present muse. By my count, NPR hosts interviewed Schiff 25 times about Trump and Russia. Yeah, taking your complete word from Adam Schiff just shows how biased NPR truly is. During many of those conversations, Schiff alluded to purported evidence of collusion. The Schiff talking points became the drumbeat of NPR news reports. But when the Mueller report found no credible evidence of collusion, NPR's coverage was notably sparse. Russiagate quietly faded from our programming. It's one thing to swing and miss on a major story. Unfortunately, it happens. You follow the wrong leads, you get misled by sources you trusted, you're emotionally invested in a narrative, and bits of circumstantial evidence never add up. It's bad to blow a big story. What's worse is to pretend it never happened. To move on with no mea culpas, no self-reflection, especially when you expect high standards of transparency from public figures and institutions. But don't practice those standards yourself. That's what shatters trust and engenders cynicism about the media. Russiagate was not NPR's only miscue. Now that's where I'm going to stop reading that article right there, but it goes on to talk about how NPR pretty much did throw the Hunter Biden story in there because they did think that it was going to push Trump over the line. And then they also talk about all the hysteria with COVID, how they really didn't get it right on that as well too. This just goes to show, like I said, NPR is only one part of the puzzle. Of all those news organizations, of all those social media giants out there who are pushing a narrative to manipulate Americans. And there's a lot of Americans who fall into that. That is why Biden could go onto his social media accounts and sit here and put out these blatant lies, because people are in this echo chamber hearing the exact same thing from the mainstream media. This is a problem, and I hope that it's not something that continues moving forward. The best thing about X, or used to be Twitter, is the community notes. I truly believe that when you have a conglomerate of people coming together to put their own perspectives, their own facts into a topic of discussion, that is what America is all about. But when you're consistently labeling those on the right or conservatives as misinformation specialists or disinformation, then you don't take those points of views credible. So I don't know if I'm going to get any lefties out there who are listening to this. You might look at me and think I'm a total bullshit artist. All I'm saying is just look in the mirror and look at that self-reflection. Are you truly getting credible news stories that you are taking this information from? Or are you just pointing your finger and staying within your bubble, essentially ignoring anything that goes against your narrative? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate it so much. If you could do me a huge favor and follow along this channel. And until next time, stay free.